Now that enough time has passed for you to have completely given up on your New Year's resolutions, let's work on the one that you can actually improve today, getting better at guitar and playing the way you've always wanted to play. So, we're gonna start this off right by doing the people's key, the key of G major, and finally learning how you can improve your guitar playing. It's funny, it's like, how do you even name a lesson like this? Because we're gonna be incorporating scales and chords, but it's really just gonna be playing the instrument in a way of just kind of, manipulating notes and making things sound more musical. So what I mean by this is we need two pieces of information to do this. We need a G major chord, which I hope you already know that. If not, no worries. We'll start right here. Middle finger 3 on the low E string, pointer finger 2 on the A string. If you're classy and you're rolling into 2024 like a boss, you put your ring finger on the 3rd fret on the B string. First thing that you're gonna do is don't play with the high E string, right? B string right there. Just like that. So we're gonna have this, and we're gonna combine this with the G major scale. We're gonna do a 3 notes per string version of it just because it'll make more sense visually in the long term. 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7 on the E and the A string, 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7 on the D and the G string, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8 on the B and the E string, okay? So the whole thing that we're gonna start with is we're gonna take all the notes there, and again, 3 notes per string across 6 strings is 18 different notes, right? It can be daunting to think of like, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. It's like, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do 2 strings at a time. We're gonna group these together because it's perfectly symmetrical when you do it this way. 3, 5, 7, 3, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. And again, you don't have to play them with, especially the lower strings, you don't have to use the same fingerings that I'm using, which we're gonna demonstrate here. We're gonna establish the chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That second 4 count, you're gonna explore these notes 2 strings at a time. So, an example of that'll be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And then we're gonna go back. Then maybe. All right, so we're gonna take a chord, and then we're gonna have a space that we're gonna use the notes to fill that space with something musical. Now, when you first start doing this, it might sound kind of mechanical. It might sound like this, where I have that G major chord, and then I'm gonna jump to the D and the G strings by themselves, right? And again, one way to kind of maybe help yourself visualize this mentally is by double stopping through it, playing them as little mini pieces of chords, right, together. 4 and 4, 5 and 5, 7 and 7 is really the same way as, right? So when you first start doing this exercise, it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? See how I'm just doing that? Just playing it as a little 6-note scale, essentially. That's all in order, forward and backward. And that's not a bad thing, right? Even though eventually we'll get it to sound a little more musical, a little more interesting, this is a great way to start training just jumping between this chord position and then this lead position, right? So the first thing we're gonna do is keeping that in mind, but also let's go through all these sets of strings as double stops, just to kind of get your brain in the pattern of seeing G major as being like this for the E and the A strings, 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 7, and then for the D and the G strings, 4, 4, 5, 5, 7, 7, and then for the B and the E strings, 5, 5, 7, 7, 8, 8. Okay, so if we play those like that, now again, that doesn't sound super musical, but I really think that's the best way to chunk that information together in just like a really efficient way that you'll be able to remember a little bit more, right? Those are the first 2 strings, middle 2. There's 18 notes there that you'll never forget because they just become essentially 1 2-note symmetrical thing. And all the notes are always gonna be there in any key where this is your root note. We do the same thing in the key of A. right? I think it's just like a really easy way to kind of cheat and remember the scale instead of playing the whole thing in a shape like that, right? So let's focus on just going back and forth between that G major chord and then the D and G string set of 4, 5, and 7. So while you're ready for that, let me tell you about the sponsor of this video. It's Elixir Strings. I'm sure a huge portion of you guys out there are like, you know, when's the last time I changed my strings? You probably can't remember it. You might have gone all of 2023 without putting a fresh set of strings on your guitar. It's time, guys. Elixir is the best string out there. They sponsor a ton of videos of mine, a huge partner of mine. Phosphor Bronze, NanoWeb 12s are the ones. They last forever. They might last you all of 2024, even though you might want to change it once or twice throughout the year, especially with the amount of playing that you're going to be doing using this new method. Elixir Strings, affiliate link in the description. Thank you, Elixir, for sponsoring this video and all the other ones. So let's start. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now you'll notice that I'm not skipping any moments in time, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, which is why it doesn't sound really like, you know, a melody you might be used to. It sounds more like a scale, right? And I'm even playing it in a scale shape using my pointer, middle, pinky, pointer, middle, pinky. But I'm just kind of warming up. And that's the important part right there. Getting used to this, having ending it on my pointer finger and then getting my middle finger back in time. Okay, I think that's kind of like an important thing to think about when you're jumping back and forth between a chord and a scale. And again, eventually it'll all sound like just music instead of chord, then scale. But this is how we're gonna start it, right? So after you do this for a while, that, right, that came from that, you know, that same scale. I'm omitting notes. We're always probably gonna end up doing something pentatonic sounding, but right there I'm just going 5, 7, 5, 7, 7, and I'm really focusing on just the D and G strings to get really familiar with this shape. Maybe I can go. See, I did the exact same thing time-wise with 5 and 7 that I'm doing with 4 and 5. And that's the beauty of these symmetrical shapes, because you can kind of have this counter melody or like this call and response type thing that you're doing. I go to lower strings or the higher strings, and it's all gonna sound good. So maybe I can just go through these, maybe one string set at a time, and then just kind of get a feel for how this sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back to G. 2, 3, 4. Back to G. 2, 3, 4. Back to G. 2, 3, 4. Higher. And you notice I can kind of like drag that note back into position, all right? Now that's all well and good, but eventually you're gonna wanna add other chords into the mix. So let's start with something simple. Let's do the 4 chord in the key of G, G, A, B, C, C major. But let's make it classy. Let's make it a major 7 chord, my favorite chord, the 4 chord as a major 7 chord. We could do it an easy way. Just doing this, 3E, 3A, 2D, open on the top. Another way that you could do this is play it like this, because if we're going back and forth between a G and a C major 7, this is like a really efficient way to do it, where you keep your middle finger there, have your ring finger pop up to the A string, pointer finger down a string, and then you're here. So we could go G, then to C. Back to G. C. And then just really keep doing this. Until you really get comfortable with just the D and G strings. And then move on to another string set. Let's go higher, let's go B and E. And then to do this, I'm also gonna switch the chord voicings up, all right? So instead of playing open G and C, because I'm jumping, right? Every time you do that, it's like, I'm just jumping a little bit. That's the hard part here. Let's take some different chord voicings. Let's use G major 7, which now you'll see my pointer finger is rooted on the G, on the low E string, which is nice because that already gets me in that shape that I can go through. And then from this G, I can go to C major 7 with this chord voicing, which is 3, 5, 4, 5 on the middle 4 strings, right? So this is gonna be an easier way to get into the B and E strings, which remember was 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. Right? So G. Open. Open. Closed voice. And then you can always close it with that, original voicing there. Now, eventually you're gonna wanna just maybe take chord progressions and then just add all that to it. Like, let's add a different chord. Let's add a minor chord into it. Let's do A minor, right? A couple different ways you can play it. Open A minor, or if you want to get a little fancier for this year, we go A minor 11, my favorite minor chord voicing, which is 5 on the E string, D string, and G string, middle finger, ring finger, pinky, and then 3 on the B string. Or if you just want to make it A minor 7, just get those notes on the 5th fret. And now what we can do is we can switch back and forth between 3 different chords, and then let's do a thing where we just double stop through these shapes to really kind of add that element of practice of just using those, right? So G major, A minor, C major 7, back to G. G, C, A minor, all right, now the last thing I want to do is go back to the original exercise where we were taking one chord and then playing around with this scale, all right? Now what I want you to do to wrap this up is to end every phrase with a different note in that scale. So what I mean by that is, let's do that G chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first time maybe I'll end on the 7th fret of the D string, right? And then no matter what I end up playing, I want to end on a different note. That's my whole focus. I know that these are going to be my 6 notes on just the D and G strings, right? But more than thinking about, all right, well, what notes are these, or even what frets are these, just think of ending. Whatever you play, end on a different note. So the first time I'm gonna end on, and let's come up with a game plan. First time I'm gonna end up on the 7th fret. The second time I'm gonna end up on the 5th fret. Third time I'm gonna end up on the 4th fret. Whatever I play before that is fair game. G. So eventually, once you start thinking like that, you're gonna develop way better hearing because, all right, what you're playing before doesn't really matter where you end up, but you're gonna start making these connections with your fingers and your ears, which I think is like the most important thing. If you can take a scale shape, connect the repetition of thinking in that shape, but hearing what you're doing, and then having a game plan of where you're going, eventually you make this connection between your brain, your fingers, and your ear, which is the most important thing that you can do for your musicianship, the fastest way you're gonna improve at guitar this year, and this is gonna feel good on these amazing Elixir strings. thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comment section, and I will talk to y'all soon.